Hi, my name's Callum and I'm here today to talk about whether students with disabilities or neurodivergent students would be better off enrolling in mainstream schools or in special schools. So today I'm going to talk about the advantages of these students enrolling in mainstream schools and talk about some of the development that they could possibly gain from being enrolled in a mainstream school, and then I'm going to talk about the differentiated support that students with disabilities or neurodivergent students gain from being enrolled in special schools. The advantages of enrolling students with disability in mainstream schools is it helps to target different sorts of learning they wouldn't otherwise have in special schools, and this also helps able-bodied students to acquire different types of learning. In 1991, UK teaching academic Colin Barnes argued that integrating students with disabilities into mainstream schools was imperative in the fight against discrimination. And he elaborated that having students with disabilities working alongside these able-bodied peers targeted the development of cooperative learning and interpersonal social skills. This perspective was furthered by researcher Alison Wertheimer, who in 1997 wrote that inclusive education modelled in mainstream schools can assist disabled students to develop qualifications to compete in mainstream economic societies. So I'd like to speak of my experience on my pre-service placements and what I was able to witness and learn from having neurodiverse students integrated into mainstream schools. So recently I was a pre-service teacher in a foundation class that had 2 students with ADHD who had recently been cognitively assessed and put on behaviour management plans. One of these students, by no means academically challenged, but definitely had behavioural management problems that stemmed from when he felt like he wasn't receiving enough attention in a classroom, or if he was feeling unsettled in his routine, his behaviour would become quite heightened. And he would become difficult for the teacher to manage. Now sometimes, and this is a point that I'll touch later on about differentiation based on specific students, sometimes this student was too heightened for my supervising teacher and I to be able to manage while still controlling the rest of the class and furthering the lesson. And in these instances, the vice principal would come to collect the student and take him to the office until he was calmed down well enough to rejoin the classroom. But in most instances, this student would be put into small groups within the class to complete the activity, and while he was focused on doing the activity and not simply being removed from the classroom, he was better able to complete his work. However, special schools, by which I mean facilities where all students enrolled have a neurodivergent condition or a physical disability, and all the staff employed are specially trained to academically engage, intersocially develop and behaviourally manage, these students are well equipped to cater to these students' needs. In 2013, US special pedagogy researcher William Lee Hewitt argued that special schools provide a more supportive environment for special needs students to become functioning and contributing members in schools and in humanity, owing to the targeted skills of its teachers and the smaller class sizes. So in mainstream schools, students with special needs risk being overlooked and falling behind academically and socially because their teachers do not have the resources they need to support them every class, every day, every week of a school year. This is actually something I witnessed on one of my recent pre-service teaching placements, where there was a student who was significantly intellectually deficient, and the school had applied for her to be admitted to one of the nearby special schools, but it was taking so long for her approval to be accepted that she was ultimately regressing socially and academically by spending time in a school that couldn't support her needs. In conclusion, I believe that students should be enrolled in mainstream schools unless they have a neurodivergency or a physical or intellectual disability that is so severe that they should be enrolled in a special school. Ultimately, what the parents, teachers and school have to ask themselves on a case-by-case basis with each student is which educational facility will best allow them to intersocially and academically develop for a life beyond school.